Get out of here, Stalker.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl is one of the greatest games ever made. Its atmosphere, unmatched. Firefights, incredibly intense. Sitting around a campfire drunk while someone strums a guitar, pure bliss. But it could take some time to get there. You need to get past the hurdle that the first 2 to 3 hours of the game throws your way, especially on your first playthrough. It's easy to bounce off Shadow of Chernobyl. I've heard many do so over the years, never to return. I've done so a couple times. I played it for the first time about a decade ago, but dropped off before it really clicked. A few years ago, I gave it another chance, and I'm so glad I did. And for this playthrough, it was nice to revisit the game with this knowledge. While Shadow of Chernobyl still kicked my ass for the first couple of hours, getting to the point where the game clicks was shorter. It's less of struggling to survive in firefights, and that fight for survival shifts towards your enemies. For my playthrough a few years ago, it clicked infiltrating the base just prior to entering the first underground lab. Here, it happened earlier on, making my way into the military base to retrieve some documents. For those viewers who have played S.T.A.L.K.E.R, I'd love to hear in the comments where the game really clicked for you on that front. Everything comes together, and there's a few things out there like S.T.A.L.K.E.R. While the Metro games are excellent, with a company founded by and staffed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R veterans, they still fall short of that magic that the S.T.A.L.K.E.R series has. So while S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is supposed to come out this year after another troubled development, although I won't be surprised if there's more delays, let's revisit the first of the 3 S.T.A.L.K.E.R titles, Shadow of Chernobyl. S.T.A.L.K.E.R was developed by Ukrainian developer GSC Game World, who for a time were the largest Eastern European game developer. Prior to S.T.A.L.K.E.R, they released the RTS series Cossacks, which sold large numbers in Europe. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is loosely based off 2 pieces of source material. First, there is Roadside Picnic, a 1972 science fiction novel from Russian brothers Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. The other piece of source material is the 1979 Russian film S.T.A.L.K.E.R, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, the screenplay also written by the Strugatsky brothers. I highly recommend checking out both. Roadside Picnic is a short, engrossing read. The film was a slow burner and clocks in just under 3 hours, but well worth a watch and it will stick with you. Both works have that heavy slant of philosophy that Russian works can be known for, something that the game mostly forgoes, but more on that later. The book was responsible for bringing the word stalker into the Russian language. It was influenced by the book Stalky & Co. by writer and eyebrow extraordinaire Rudyard Kipling. Funny enough, the term stalker wasn't decided until later in the drafts, initially being prospector or a trapper. In Shadow of Chernobyl, it's an acronym: scavengers, trespassers, adventurers, loners, killers, explorers, and robbers. So it has a different meaning than how it is in the West, instead of the every move you make, every breath you take kind of stalker. Remind me again why this song is popular at weddings. So no one would bat an eye in Ukraine when founder of GSC Game World, Sergei Grigorovich, would have S.T.A.L.K.E.R on the license plates of his cars. What the zone is amongst these titles differs. In Roadside Picnic and the S.T.A.L.K.E.R film, it's the remains of aliens making visits and leaving things behind, similar to how humans would leave behind their roadside picnic in the forest. In the game, it's set a few years after a second Chernobyl disaster, but there are still plenty of overlaps. More on that later. S.T.A.L.K.E.R was very ambitious in what it was looking to achieve. They made their own engine, known as the X-ray engine. They also made use of an AI system known as A-Life. With this AI system, they wanted to make it possible that other stalkers could beat the game before you could, collecting artifacts and loot along the way. However, this did get scaled back in the final version, but NPCs will go about and do their own thing. This game had a troubled development, and the end product was smaller in scope than what they were looking to achieve. Granted, what game doesn't do so? But S.T.A.L.K.E.R had a very devoted fan base prior to release and picked apart old builds, including one that leaked online. There's an excellent video documenting how the builds changed over the years, which you could check out in the card here or check for a link in the description. It's a long watch, but does a fantastic job of breaking down the changes that occurred over the years in the builds. So upon the game's release in 2007, the game was a janky mess. Classic Euro jank. Passionate developers with big ambitions, but without the resources to make it all come together. But due to the game's strong following and modability of the game, fans have picked away at years to get it more along the lines of what the developers were initially going for. So one of the barriers of entry when it comes to Shadow of Chernobyl is setting it up to work properly, as it does have a reputation of being difficult to do so. However, over the years, the fanbase has meticulously laid out guides that are easy to follow in what you need to do to get the game running well. S.T.A.L.K.E.R has one of the best, if not the best fanbase around when it comes to video games. To me, they're the Sopranos of game fanbases. What do I mean by that? I find the Sopranos fanbase one of the best around. It's mostly good fun, people breaking each other's balls, memes, but also a lot of great discussion. I found the same case with the S.T.A.L.K.E.R community. It contains an extremely dedicated mod community, and as far as I could see, it's all love on that front. No furries, no kid diddlers, people being told that they need to put deodorant on, or modders putting their fetishes into their work. At least that's what I hope. I'm sure someone in the comment section will mention some form of fan drama that's happened in the past on that front. For what to install, this image that you're seeing here is an excellent starting point. This is what I use for this playthrough, and if it's your first, you should as well. There's also a video to watch to get everything set up. Check the card here or in the description for that. And I didn't have any crashes at all during my playthrough. Sure, I'd have some odd glitches here and there, but otherwise everything ran great. It's up to you though. You do you, but the suggested way is the best way to get the most authentic experience and can be seen as best practices that's built up over time. The community has your best interest in heart. If you want to try other mods, there's plenty to do so, but recommended after a first playthrough. There's always a S.T.A.L.K.E.R thread going on the video game general board on 4chan that has tons of documentation and guides for you to follow. And then there's the difficulty setting. This one has sparked plenty of debate over the years. It's suggested to go with the highest difficulty, Master, when playing, and that's what I've done. However, there does seem to be some myths and misinformation over the years of how it changes the game. All that aside, it's still best just to stick with Master for the best experience. Remember, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R community has meticulously documented the game and modded it for years. So let's get into the game itself. To know about my footage, Shadowplay for whatever reason makes it appear more grainy and hazy than what happened when I was playing. I don't know why. Let's talk about one of the first quests in the game, clearing out the bandit camp from a nearby area. You'll meet up with a group of nearby stalkers to clear them out. At this point, you have little armor, dinky weapons. You're going to die a lot if not careful. However, you could also play this first quest by hanging back and letting the other stalkers take care of the bandits. You'll just be like that person in a group project who doesn't do anything but still takes credit. S.T.A.L.K.E.R isn't a run and gun game. It's short bursts of frantic combat, staying in cover, leaning out to take your shots. It can take just a few shots to take you down, especially early on when you don't have that great equipment. Standing still, crouching, and leaning out for shots will give you the best chances to succeed. After your fights, you'll loot the bodies, pick up guns, and be ready to swap guns out on the regular with ones that are in better condition. Lower condition weapons are prone to miss more and jam. It's advisable to check bodies as some will update your PDA with hidden stash locations. On the note of the PDA, you will have a display in the top left corner. It'll show how far quest objectives are, how many NPCs are around, nearby enemies, and nearby allies. Now, I'm usually against these kind of objective markers. In fact, I think it's one of the biggest design choices that have had a negative impact on the gaming world at large. But here, it works well. It's non-intrusive, it makes sense from a narrative standpoint. All stalkers in the zone have PDAs. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there's going to be a point in the game where if you stick with it, things really begin to click. If you're like me, S.T.A.L.K.E.R will rapidly move up your list of favorite games as a result. Once you get used to the gunplay, how the AI behaves, get access to better equipment, combat counters feel less about being stuck in the zone with others. It's going to start feeling more like they're stuck in the zone with you. Not that the game becomes a cakewalk afterwards. The game will still throw plenty of hurdles your way, but it's a large shift in how you're going to deal with the game and your enjoyment of it. There are fewer things more enjoyable than clearing out an encampment with others, to gather around at the fireplace after, having some vodka, and listening to someone strum on the guitar. Of course, this isn't the only thing the zone has for us to deal with. There is plenty more. To quote Roadside Picnic, of course, fire, toxic, gas, and bullets. These are only earthly perils. The zone doesn't have those. In the zone, you have other worries. So what are these other worries that we have in the zone? Well, beyond other stalkers, there's a variety of mutants for us to deal with. The zone mutated the wildlife, and will chase you down if we get too close. That said, they can be used against your enemies as well if you get drawn into combat. It's not uncommon to be making your way throughout the zone and encounter some stalkers dealing with the wildlife. But the further we get in, especially the underground sections, some of the most truly terrifying mutants will make their appearance. Hold that thought for now. Throughout the zone, we'll also come across anomalies, pockets of energy that will harm us, usually lethally if we step into them. So how do we avoid them? Well, you'll be able to see an outline in the air, your detector will start to beep, or you could see bolts to see where they are located, so you can make a safe passage. This comes right from the book and the film itself. It's another obstacle that makes you more cautious in going through the zone. Stashes tend to be placed around areas with high levels of anomalies, and direct paths to objectives may not be the best way forward. To again quote Roadside Picnic, the zone you could easily take a familiar route 100 times and kick off on the 101st. But among these traps, we could find some treasure. We could find artifacts that we can equip. These can boost our stats, such as increasing how bulletproof we are or how much damage we take from mutant attacks. There are trade-offs to this. Some artifacts will boost these stats, but increase our radiation levels. Others will reduce our radiation levels, but at a cost for something like endurance. So there is some customization here in how you want to tackle challenges throughout the zone. The zone is an unforgiving place. It's bleak with the torn down architecture, to unrelenting foes and mutants, and yet there's still some companionship and hope amongst it. There are areas like the bar, a place of comfort and safety away from the troubles of the zone. Stalkers hang around the campfire, talking with one another, strumming a guitar. You could trade with merchants of all the swag that you found in your excursions for something better. Of course, you could trade with friendly stalkers throughout your travels, but merchants will have more to buy from, and more that you could sell them. And yes, I did say swag. The book itself mentions swag as opposed to saying loot. I'm guessing it's a translation thing. Plus, who doesn't like swag? I mentioned earlier how S.T.A.L.K.E.R arguably has the best atmosphere in any game I played. Let's expand more on that. The zone has plenty of abandoned, worn-down industrial buildings that add to this feeling of loss, of loneliness, of something long gone. These kind of industrial areas tend to be boring in most games, but the worn-down and derelict nature of them in the zone give that feeling of dread and helplessness. But what other areas help with the atmosphere? The stellar sound, design, and ambience. In fact, the ambience is so, well, ambient. I went back and listened to the ambient soundtrack on YouTube and just realized how much I didn't notice in the game. Of course, everyone who's played the game knows that cat meow that we'll hear every once in a while. Now let's get to the weather and the time of day. Rainstorms and lightning add a hell of a lot of atmosphere. Surprise, surprise. They can also be used to help with a more stealthy approach, depending on the time of day, can help quiet your sound and make you less visible, at least until lightning strikes. But it's when the sun goes down that the atmosphere really starts to take a turn. It leads to some of the most memorable moments, not just in the game itself, but in any game I've played. If you followed the install guide, you could change the brightness of night, but I recommend the default setting, which is the darkest. Yes, we have a flashlight, and later on some suits will have night vision for us. Unless I'm forgetting something, when I played the game a few years ago, when I installed all the mods, there was a sleeping bag so you could rest at various points. For some reason, this time around, it didn't install. But anything that's better. And funny enough, this is something the developers wanted in the game, but was cut due to the amount of bugs that caused. To quote Roadside Picnic again, the darkness can be so much that when you're showing your ass to the stars, you can't see your own two hands. And these were some of my favorite moments that emerged when everything aligned at the right time. Early in the game, when you raid one of the military bases, it was midnight for me and a thunderstorm occurred. Fighting the darkness with allies, with flashes of lightning to light things up, a sheer rush. There's a part later on where I emerged from the underground into the darkness with enemies in the area, but I could navigate around them in the dark and make my way out quietly. There was also clearing out a freedom base with some duty members in the pouring rain, sniping away and using night vision to get a better view. When raiding the camp to the north in the Dark Valley, the sun began to set and I slowly cleared out the encampment as darkness began to fall. Near the end of the game of running to the center, I encountered some allies to clear out the road ahead in the dark and pouring rain, and enjoyed a campfire with them afterwards while getting drunk.
В поле пойдете? Не забудьте бутылку ему оставить, а не то... Благодарю, доктор. Обязательно, обязательно.
I then continued afterwards with other allies to head to the center of the zone as the sun was coming up. Of course, I had many great encounters throughout the game during the day or in calm conditions, but having a firefight in the pouring rain and darkness is just so exhilarating. It adds an incredible level of immersion and replayability to the game. How different would these encounters have been at other points in the day or in different conditions? But there are other sections where the atmosphere truly shines. Depending on how you feel, these will be some of your favorite parts of the game, or the ones you dread the most. These parts are where the horror elements of Shadow of Chernobyl really start to emerge. There are a few underground sections amongst the main quest in the game. These underground sections are the game at its most bleak, and where the zone really shows its ugly side. These areas will have us dealing with plenty of anomalies, but also some of the fiercest mutants that the zone has in store for us. For example, we have the Controller. While we'll only deal with a few of these throughout the game, they're going to fuck you up really quickly if you're not careful. The way they attack you is the game's horror at its best. There are a few of these underground portions in which you'll return from the way you came, now having to deal with stalkers along the way. They're fantastic, smaller linear sections, and you can see that 4A Games, staffed by many former STALKER staff to work on the Metro games, will make plenty use of these type of areas. However, they don't quite hit the same highs or the atmosphere as they do in STALKER. Now getting to the plot of the game, this is spoiler territory, just for your information. The game has a simple plot hook. We're the Marked One, we're not sure who we are. All we know is that we must kill the S.T.A.L.K.E.R, a well-known stalker in the zone. From there, it's mostly a MacGuffin to MacGuffin plot. Go here, find this item, turn this on, turn this off. The plot of Shadow of Chernobyl is the game's biggest missed opportunity. While there are some interesting characters around, the game's side quests that we pick up along the way are mostly go here and collect item or clear out this area. They don't exactly flesh out the world or give insight into the plot, like a good side quest should do. It's fine that they made this choice, but considering the source material that the game works with, which heavily leans on philosophical musings, it feels like a missed opportunity. That said, the game builds up to a great end. With one of the MacGuffins, the Brain Scorcher, turned off, getting to the middle of the zone is now possible. We're told about the Wish Granter, a self-explanatory artifact that exists in the middle of the zone. This is inspired from the game's source material. In the book, it's known as the Golden Sphere, whereas in the film, it's known as the Room. Just prior to the center of the zone, if we did certain quests, we can pick up some items that will help us get the true ending. This area is fantastic, giving the sense that everyone is heading for the middle. It's Monolith, a faction, doing all they can to prevent it. This stretch to get into the power plant can be a bit of trial and error, and it's best to just run past everything, especially once the timer kicks in. Once we get inside, we get to one of the game's more fascinating, yet frustrating parts. It's full of tight hallways with plenty of tough enemies to take down, and goes on for a bit too long, I feel. The atmosphere is incredible, with an unsettling voice in the background.
Иди ко мне. Ты обретешь то, что заслуживаешь.
And we can make our way to the Wish Granter, and depending on how we play the game, the Wish Granter will grant us our wish. But in a monkey's paw kind of way. This is one of the game's bad endings.
I want immortality.
However, if we go further in, we get to the core and encounter the sea consciousness, and we get the big lore bomb of what's been going on in the zone and our role in it. This is the game's equivalent of the Vigil scene near the end of Mass Effect, and an absolute lore dump that answers most of our questions. Then we get a choice to join sea consciousness or reject them, leading to two different endings. If we reject, we have another bit of heavy combat before completing the game. If you were disappointed that you had to just run through the prior area due to the time limit, this section makes use of it so you can enjoy it for what it is. I also got lucky here with the atmosphere. Coming out in the pouring rain at night, as I made my way through it, the rain went away and the sun came up. It's a great way to end the game, even if it's a bit more linear than what came before.
I don't know whether I was right or wrong. I guess I'll never know. But I made it. And I guess I should be thankful for that.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl is a hell of a ride, even if it fell short of what it was initially planning on doing. Plus, over the years, fans have modded the game down to have their own tweaks and returned the game more into what was initially intended. Shadow of Chernobyl was followed up by two sequels in 2008 and 2009. I've briefly played both these titles, and likely will be future videos at some point. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 was announced in 2010. However, in late 2011, founder and CEO of GSC Game World, Sergei Grigorovic, decided to dissolve GSC Game World. It was a combination of personal reasons and financial ones. The developer was struggling to get some funding for the game. Some staff want to continue with S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. However, Grigorovic still had the rights to the IP, so a group of former GSC Game World staff went on to form Vostok Games. They released Survarium, a free-to-play online shooter in the vein of Stalker, in 2015. 4A Games was founded by former GSC Game World staff in 2006 after finishing Stalker, but before being published in the West. They were upset with the leadership under Sergey. They've gone on to achieve great success with the Metro line of games. Another group founded by former GSC Game World staff was West Games, and launched a Kickstarter campaign for a spiritual successor to Stalker called Ariel. However, the Kickstarter was shut down due to guideline violations, and fans considering it a bit of a scam. They tried again with Stalker Apocalypse, as a full word, not the acronym Stalker. However, by this point, GSC Game World reopened in late 2014, and they would take legal action if they tried to get the game to market. So with GSC Game World back in action, what would come next? In 2018, it was announced that Stalker 2 would see a 2021 release. So, as of recording this, here we are in 2021. But there's not a whole lot to work off here. We've seen some trailers and some previews, but zero gameplay. The game is being made on Unreal Engine 4 as opposed to their own engine like the previous Stalker titles, and it's also being released for Xbox at launch. So will we see it this year? I mean, it's not like the game hasn't been a long time coming, so what's a few more delays if that's the case? Plus, a number of key staff have left over the years to form other studios, as I previously mentioned. That said, none of them have been able to reach the highs that Stalker has generated. On doing research for the video, reading these articles about Grigorovic doesn't seem like he's the greatest of bosses, with articles mentioning how low the wages were at GSC Game World while he was riding in style. So who knows, maybe having Grigorovic at the helm, difficulties aside that he may cause, might be what's missing from these other games from former staff. That will be left to see, however, when Stalker 2 comes out. And hey, Stalker fans are used to waiting, so what's another delay or so? Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, you know the whole shebang. Thanks to my tier 3 patrons here. If you'd like to support the channel further, please check out my Patreon. I will have a link below. Alright everyone, Boulder Punch out.
Chicken